Recording in progress.
Go to the right.
I'm doing. Good to meet you. Matt, you're not mad.
I love that.
He's mad. There you go. Okay. Just how we meet each other. Otherwise, I would just get confused.
I went to say that during the service.
You like my shoes? You like my shoes?
You never know. That needs to be versatile for the.
It's a great camp, but a lot of people should go to.
Likewise.
You probably heard the gospel at the same time. Does it play or pray?
Pray.
It's a reminder. Okay.
Yeah.
Should we for Ryland or should we just pray for him?
Where did he go? Oh, we can wait. How are y'all's days going?
Pretty good, Jeff.
They are all. That's my dad's. All right. Are y'all all like 11 o'clock people or do you prefer 9 o'clock? Just because you see, I'm like, I would love to go to 9 every time, but nobody else does.
Football season?
Hey, that's what I just
Football
said.
season, the 9 is.
Wait, what?
I was like, I love the 9, but nobody goes to.
Right? It's like, nobody want like, it's the way I see it here is, but be, hey, sis, to be done with church at 10:30.
Have your whole day.
Did anyone like the 5?
That-
I like the 5.
I did too.
In college, I love it.
When you're out of town?
But by the end of
I like
college,
the 5 a
I
lot.
was like ready for church more. So, let's go spend time. Anyway,
Any more icebreakers?
are y'all ready for summer to be? I could just talk to a guy. This is my passion. Do any of y'all like define like summer begins, summer starts besides spawn? It's
Look at the small group stuff like that.
early September. Early September.
Potentially the first week too.
There's gonna be,
What month is
I don't know
this?
if you know this, but our small group is split.
Oh,
Divergent.
great.
It's growing.
Divergent.
It's grown so big that
Multiply.
we're now.
Which one's Eastern
That's
Orthodox
right.
and which one's Eastern Orthodox and which one is that?
Oh.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Which is alpha group, and which is beta group?
Well, I'll answer that.
Are y'all sticking together or are you?
We're splitting up.
Wait, what?
We're leading one actually.
Wait,
So
so
y'all
y'all
get
is
it together?
We're leading a new one.
it the same night?
Do I?
Is it the same night, same time? Oh, so you can't, yeah.
All right, fine, we'll do
That's
it.
smart.
All right, no break.
I got it. Yeah. Could y'all bow your heads with me in prayer? Dear Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for giving us all time to spend some time on Sunday afternoon. Hopefully learning more about you, Father. Thank you for this group of people and their hearts for stewarding wealth and possessions on this earth in a way that's glorifying you, Father. I pray that we would all surrender our pride and our preconceived ideas of what we think is right, and not that you and Nathan know what's right either, but be willing to wrestle together to understand what your plan for the world is, Father. You should say a prayer. Amen.
Amen. All right, guys. For some of y'all, everyone kind of knows this. I feel like we know you guys, but Nathan, Matthew, we both do financial advising, and God's spoken a passion for us between the intersection of faith and finances, and so we're here trying to leverage those for the kingdom and share that with you guys. So that's why we're here. So we're gonna kind of do a brief overview for people that may have missed the first few weeks. So we're kind of speeding through this, but we essentially walked through the book and split into 3 parts the first 3 weeks. First week being money principles. And so I believe that like this is like a really core based understanding to help shape the whole broader picture of faith and finances. And so I'm going to speed through them, but we spent a long time on them. You can look back. Actually, this one's recorded, so you can go back and watch it.
And I'll preface also by saying most everything in the first 3 weeks is covered in that book over there on the table called God and Money. So if you actually are interested and learning more in depth, and spending more time on it, and God's money, there's a copy right there available for you.
Full.
Free.
But first, I'm gonna speak through this overview from the last few weeks. First, God owns it all. My favorite, most important principle, in my opinion. Deuteronomy 8:17 says, you may say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hand have produced this wealth for me. But do not forget, is your Lord your God who gave you the ability to produce wealth, right? So it's really easy to think that I made this money, so it's mine, but God gave you the ability in the first place. There's other verses that point to, hey, everything that is in the earth is God's. So if you think of yourself as just a steward, it's not mine, it's God's. That changes the whole way you look at every single spending decision, every money decision. The love of money is insidious and fleeting. So the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, verse 76. And so it's deceitful. Like one of the reasons why I want to have this group is because people don't talk about it enough. And it's kind of this taboo thing in the church, we feel like. And so, but at the core of it, like this is what a lot of people are wrestling with all the time, almost every day for me. And then there's, over 2,000 verses in the Bible about it. And so, but for some reason, it's kind of this under wraps, like, we're elevating the sin of adultery, for example, but like minimizing maybe the sin of greed, right? And so it's insidious and fleeting. Our wealth and possessions to be used for God's purposes. How am I leveraging what God's entrusted to me for his kingdom, right? How am I storing up treasures, not on earth, but in heaven? Giving breaks the power of money has over us. We'll talk about this later, but like, I think the easiest way to break ourselves free from the love of money is to be radically generous. And then when you give, giving should be voluntary, generous, sacrificial, cheerful, and needs-based. That's 2 Corinthians 9. Bang, bang. You use like slide. That's just like broad. Any thoughts, questions on those? Those are just really helpful for me. Those are outlined in the book as well. I'm like, hey, it's a good baseline. If you understand this, it'll be really helpful. So,
What does the word insidious mean?
kind of like, I don't know, I think of like a little.
I think of the movie.
It's pure evil.
Yeah, I think,
Sounds right.
and I think of like, when I think of that word, I don't know if this is the correct application of the word, but I think of like, that along with like, and the enemy like being deceptive and craftful and like deceitful in the ways that he's like doing that too. 'Cause I think it's like low key.
I think it means like pure evil, like corrupting from the inside out.
Yeah, it's good.
Proceeding in a gradual, subtle way with harmful.
Wow, that's good.
That's
Very
So it kind of starts out subtle,
It's
yeah.
such as like a disease, developing so gradually as to be well established before becoming apparent.
Yeah. So, yeah, we
But
can't-
above all, I would, if you're gonna remember one principle, it's 5's a lot, if you're gonna remember one, remember this one and think about this one often. If you dwell on this one, you might just accidentally end up doing all of the rest. It is all God's. And if God is who he says he is, you believe that all your money and all your possessions are his, then I think these might be a logical outflow. Next slide. So in the next week 2, we talked about our own propensities as humans for how we treat and act with God's money. So there are 2 main ones that we talk about, being spenders and savers. Me and Nathan perfectly juxtapose each other in this way, and it's kind of funny. I'm a spender. I am like, right now, I've got the money in the bank account, it's time to get it out of the bank account and live life. Nathan is, I'm not gonna speak exactly for Nathan, but what I've heard, I think Nathan is putting security in money for the long term in the future.
It's fair.
And so his tendency is to hoard it now so they can have it later. And
Tying
guys,
success to net worth or money. Success.
and God is calling us to, and we historically think, oh wow, spender bad, saver good. We need to save money. That's the responsible thing to do. What if we said, no, that's not exactly right. God says, in both of these, it's important to note that there is a common idol, and that common idol is money. So this person, the idol of money is, I want the stuff and the experiences, the joy that I have from spending, the joy I have from spending it. This one, it's, I want the security that money provides me on this side of heaven. When in reality, God is saying, both of those things are idols that you're holding above me. And so how do we turn money into something that is not an idol, but into something that is a tool to use to serve people. So we don't want to be a spender or a saver, we want to be a servant. We want to limit our consumption and our wealth building so we can use our money to bless God's people. In week 3, last week, 2 weeks ago, we talked about what it means to live in community in regards to your money. So in America particularly, we kind of have this like, everyone gets to know about my money so long as everybody is just me. And it's a very private thing sometimes, largely even it's probably more private than most covered accountability. Because accountability, you talk about a lot of private personal stuff, but I think you'll find that a lot of people will not even broach the conversation of money. I see that, I'm sure Nathan does too, in our line of work. It's people, for me at least, people will come in, if they're talking about their money to us, they're like, well, you're already on the deepest layer of my life, so then they'll bring in the rest of it.
Marriage problems.
No. Like, I don't need to know about all the rest of your life necessarily. But yeah, so Americans, evaluate yourself, take a deep inward look and say, is money something that I am unwilling to share with the people around me because I'm afraid of how they view me as a result of my financial decisions? I'm afraid of what they think I am worth, not like monetarily worth, but the value you have as a human because of how you spend your money. Because both of those things are lies propagated by Satan, used to keep you from living a full, engaged life. So with your money, regards to your money, I encourage you to seek community, and in that, seek communal giving. Be transparent, be open, and then honestly educate other people to do the same. If let the redeemed of the Lord say so. If you've been redeemed, tell people, let people experience the same freedom that you have, if money is something that has been blocking your life.
Good word, brother. Yeah, so today we're kind of walking through more practical wisdom and advice and steps. And so kind of an easier way to frame the discussion is, we like to think of, there's kind of 4 broader buckets of spending, or of uses for your money, God's money. So your live, your owe, your grow, and your give. Like live, give, owe, grow.
Yeah,
That's
like,
what you
wait a
usually
second.
do. Usually we say live, give, owe, and grow, right? So,
But we
and
want
owe,
to give, live,
sure. But owe can be broken down into debt and taxes. So it's kind of essentially 5. And that just says, hey, broadly speaking, our jobs is to help allocate limited resources toward limited alternatives. And so it's just like a helpful framework of like, hey, how am I doing in these categories? And what are the lies I'm leaving? Oh, what's up? Hey,
Welcome.
what's going on? Good to see you. You're good.
You just missed the recap, so not a big deal.
So yeah, we'll be diving into kind of each of those buckets today. All right, you're good, Mike. So usually when I've done this in the past, I'll do give towards the end or halfway through, and then I'll say, but give should be the first one that you think about, and then I won't actually start with it. So today I actually decided to start with give first, because we should give our first fruits, not our leftovers, and it's really easy to think of, okay, I'm gonna do my living first, and then I'll do my taxes, and I'll do my debt, I'll do my savings, and then I'll figure out my giving. But all through Old Testament and just a really practical way to free yourself from love money is saying, hey, this is a tangible way of like showing that this is God speaking in with this giving out of the first fruits.
So the past 3 weeks, these lectures have probably been more of that. We'll talk to you about what we read and understand from the book and the Bible. This particular one, because it is more practical in nature, we really would love it if y'all would ask questions along the way or have thoughts and just chime in.
Yeah.
This is an engaging, it's supposed to be practically, what does this mean for you? How can you do different?
So throughout the whole today, raise your hand, talk about something random that doesn't apply, ask us questions. But the question that I wrestle with, a lot of people are wrestling with is, hey, how much do I need to give? So you're thinking, how much do I need to give to like kind of make God happy? And then I can do whatever else I need to with my money. The real question should be asking, hey, if I really understand this is all God's to begin with, I should be asking how much do I need to keep, right? Because it's not even mine. And so that comes from the understanding that God owns it all. some kind of wild stat that is in that book is Americans give less than 1.8% of adjusted gross income a year, which is crazy. I think Christians is 3%. And so that I say that just to show, and they could do a whole chapter on like if Americans actually gave, example, 10%, or Christians gave 10%, how much like unreached people groups that would be meant to be met, all these different poor and marginalized groups that would be met, all different things. So that's why I say that. And then dive into why should we give? So I'm gonna dive into why, how, and where. Why acknowledges God's ownership, right? So you're saying this isn't mine to begin with, so I'm acknowledging that this is God's. It's a tangible way to show worship and show gratitude. So I'm thanking God for, like I talked about earlier, you're by doing that, you're saying this isn't, I didn't earn this. Like yes, I worked hard for this, but it isn't mine to begin with. God gave me the ability to do this, and so reflective and showing gratefulness and gratitude for what He's abundantly given to me. It's obedience to God's command to give. So, which I learned about this in at our church in college, where he says when you fast, it's like the expectation of when you fast. And then I was like, wait, it says the same thing about giving. He says when you give, and then he goes on in Matthew 6, I think. So it's a commandment to give and be generous. Helps meet the needs of others, right? That's pretty clear call of Jesus. And one of my favorite kind of metaphors for giving is, there's a spiritual warfare going on at all times, right? Where the enemy is constantly throwing arrows at us, and Ephesians 6, and the front lines, like oftentimes, there's people in ministry, missionaries, right? And so someone explained to me, well, hey, we have the opportunity as people that have, especially people in America that have been certainly financially blessed, to like help push resources to those front lines, to like provide shields and whatnot at the front lines of the enemy's arrows. And so that was a really cool metaphor for me that helps me when I'm trying to be generous. And this is actually one of my favorites, the reason why you should give, because it breaks the power that money holds in your life. So every time I'm like wrestling with a decision to be generous, it's like, this is a great opportunity for me to like free myself from the love of money, like that God can use to free me from a lot of other money. Because that's the main reason I want to do is because I want to grow something. I want to spend on something. It's like, hey, this is an opportunity to be generous, acknowledge God's ownership. Love this verse. Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. And I feel like giving kind of like breaks that as an opportunity to break the idea of never having enough.
If y'all don't believe this, or don't understand this, or are just like, I wonder what that actually feels. I just want to actually give you a small challenge. Think of an amount that's like, ooh, that would be an uncomfortable amount of money for me to give away. And just do it once. Just try it. You'll recover financially, I promise. But like this week, make a donation that is just outside of your comfort zone, just to try it and see what happens. See how you feel afterwards. Be prayerful, please. But I promise that this is one of those things where it's like, sure, that can't be true. Surely being radically generous will not like have that much of a profound impact on how I view money. Challenge.
Love that. And down we got each, this was talking about earlier, each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. Those are just like very practical things to like think about when you're being generous. Say, am I cheerful? Have I been prayerful and decided in my heart to give? Am I not doing it out of because I feel like I have to, but it's because of the love for Jesus. So yeah, thoughts about those?
If you're looking for ways to give. No,
That's
but-
actually not-
You would.
that's not-
Ryland, Tennessee at 11.
Thank you.
I know right now that the Launch Global staff by you is raising money for donations and their work. So if you are interested, looking for ways to give for missions broadly, reach out to Bayou. have a connection with somebody who will keep you updated on their life, their work, what's going on. So an easy way to start.
I've got a question
So,
I was thinking about. So I can think of examples in the Bible where Jesus did something nice. Well, he did because he's human, but mainly as like an example for us to live a life following God. I'm just trying to think, is there an example in the Bible where Jesus gives financially? Oh. Yes.
He's got lots of parables of people giving.
Yeah.
Lots of stories.
Jesus is
of
a
giving.
practical matter.
One of the possessions Jesus had.
yeah, that's, I feel like he didn't have.
Like the temple tax or whatever, what's that story?
Yeah.
But he's watching somebody.
Oh, I thought.
Oh,
was
he
saying,
got the
like,
coin from the,
Yeah.
the,
The fishes.
well, that was taxes, but he paid taxes to
Pay tax.
Romans from the fishes, so. He paid his taxes,
He did.
so there's that example. That's a good question. about that. I've been watching the shows and I feel like they're like, obviously they expound off some typical, but he's like very practically like just living off kind of the bare minimum throughout it and kind of like letting either someone be radically generous to provide throughout it. And not like depending on the needs of others.
God, Jesus had this like big coin purse he was storing up as he was walking across.
He didn't have a place to sleep.
Yeah.
We get this.
How much is another question I feel like I'm wrestling with, a lot of people are wrestling with, and we hate the idea of thinking about it probably in the first place. But I just want to push back a little bit. Something in this book and in the last few years has been pushed on me a little bit is this idea of tithe, right? So this idea of tithe that we've kind of created today. In the Old Testament, tithe actually meant giving 10% to the Levites, giving 10% to the festival of the booths, and 10% to the poor every 3 years. So that's essentially, that's 23 1/3% if you actually want to do the Old Testament tithe. But we've kind of created this like, 10% is the actual tithe. But if you actually want to go and be that like legalistic, then it's actually 20%, which no one actually wants to do. But and Jesus says, "I've come to fulfill the law and not destroy it." So really, I love this little graphic because it's on the heart, right? But so that's what it's really about is your heart, right? So and I think Randy Alcorn says, I think 10% is a really helpful way to kind of start the track of generosity. And then like kind of people that increase their percentage each year. And I know people that also give 90% away, right? So there's kind of this, hey, where's God? What's God asking of me? What is sacrificial for me? And then real briefly, people ask me a few times about gross versus net and like whether you should give off your gross percentage or your gross AGI or your net. And I've heard someone say whichever number you would have, God bless. So probably ideally the gross number.
If you're asking that question, what are you trying to do?
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Off of that, I have a question about like how you classify things, like when you spend or when you give. Like, cause a lot of times I have
Yeah.
like, you know, when you take someone out to dinner, you know, like it's hard for me to classify things.
Yeah.
I mean, even when you go to like savings and other things like that. So like, do y'all have any tips on like how to like figure out what you're actually doing with your money when it comes to like classifying things?
Yeah, I mean, I try to just like my percentage giving, I kind of just do some ministries, and then off of that is kind of just like I'm not necessarily tracking as much, and I kind of I'll talk about a little bit later about, or I'll say here, so where should I give? There's a verse 26 talks about being generous and willing to share, so like kind of having this like open hands of like, yeah, I'm not gonna like have a necessarily amount that I'm giving each year or each month outside of my percentage giving, but I'm open and generous and willing to share. But I also know people that have like, hey, we're gonna put aside $1,000 a month or whatever, $100 a month to be generous like that. So I don't know, I wouldn't,
I'm just worried about like artificially inflating spend or like, yeah, I don't know, it's weird.
yeah, personally, I think it's a good place to be in.
So what a great practice it is to budget, right? To track your spending, so you can be aware of what's happening. Why are we ultimately doing that? We're ultimately doing this so that we can steward our wealth well. And so there's two parts to that. is. Am I spending enough? Am I giving enough? Or use whatever word besides enough you want to. As long as your heart posture is cool, is honoring God in either one of those, I wouldn't necessarily worry about what the dollar figure comes out to. And so if you're living and spending in such a way that you think is honoring to God, you believe is honoring to God, and your community of believers has said, yes, you are not living flippantly, you are living purposefully. And if you're spending money on food for people, does it matter which bucket it falls into? Probably not. If your heart is to be generous towards other people, and that looks like writing a check to your church, what it looks like. I'm great practice to track it. I would put less burden on where it falls. Personally, in that example, I take the bill, I put half of it towards me, and if whatever is going to the person, take half of that, put it towards me, and half of it towards me. That's how I practically do that. But otherwise, I do that just for my like spreadsheets through the year, and I put the pie chart together. What did I spend?
But it's not a bad place to be in, either, to be like trying to figure that out. And then how much give sacrificially, right? So the widow gave, it's not about the dollar amount, you know, the widow gave 2 coins, but that was all she had. So that was really honoring to Jesus. And so sacrificially for me and versus someone that makes $1 million a year could look different. And they could be giving way more, and it would be sacrificial for
You
them.
don't make $1 million a year.
What's up, guys? 2 million. 2 million. Where do I give? This is kind of my thoughts. This isn't necessarily like what it should be, but I think baseline, you know, ideally if you're committed to your local church, you want to give to them, and through like by, for example, gives to, you know, our missionaries and other aspects. Missionaries, UPGs, which is unreached people groups, right? They talked today at church about how there's 30 to 40% of the world that have never heard the gospel. How are we leveraging wealth to further the Great Commission, or the marginalized? This book talks a ton about that, which is kind of a new area for me, that how biblical it is that God is commanding us to love the lost and the marginalized. I think financially would be a great way to do that. And someone asked last week, essentially, is it bad to give to non-Christian groups, or like should the goal be to give to like Christian groups? So like, for example, Living Water is builds wells in places and also shares the gospel, versus like a nonprofit that builds wells but like maybe doesn't share the gospel. I don't think either of them are bad. So I don't think it's like something that really really feel convicted or bad about. But I think at the same time, if you truly believe that Jesus is living water, right, then like ideally those would be aligned. That's kind of my thoughts there. I don't know. What do y'all think about that? I feel like that's like, do y'all ever thought about that before?
I feel like in scripture, Jesus doesn't say, like, he doesn't specify that you have to give towards.
Yeah.
Like anything that people that have need.
Yeah.
You know?
Same time, like, I feel usually more comfortable giving money to somebody I know that has, you know, touches about whatever with
Yeah.
the money.
Yeah.
I think it just really goes back to like heart posture. Like, what is your reason for even this organization? Like Living Well is a great example of, I think this organization does a great job of providing people with clean water. And I'd like to think that's something you choose for today, you'd be a big advocate for us. So, yeah.
To the point of not giving to groups that are not explicitly Christian, what are you trying to control in that instance that maybe God is asking you not to control? Like, if what you're giving to, the purpose of it is something you believe is God honoring, but you're afraid of the route that it gets there, there's an element of faith in that, perchance. I would just say probably don't give to like openly things that are sinful. Nice. How about we're gonna put some boundaries on this conversation. Let's not give to sinful organizations with sinful purposes in mind. Now, those waters might even be gray, but
Something to that kind of point though is this book, I've never really heard this perspective before, but they actually challenge you to be involved once the like money goes out of your bank account. And kind of like doing diligence and research on the types of organizations that you're giving to too, which I think is, it's already hard to give. And then, so it's like the idea of doing more research and like thinking more about giving is sometimes hard for people, and for me. And so I think that's a cool, kind of in that same broad topic is, is this a good organization that's run well? And there's like Charity Navigator and other groups that you can like look up organizations and see kind of the breakdown if they're a good nonprofit or not.
I think we should talk practically. A good way to give like DAFs.
Sure. Oh yeah.
So this is like God money hat, financial advisor hat. There are ways to give money that are tax advantaged. And so it's called a donor advised fund. So just like you have your investment account where you have all of your stocks and bonds and all that trash, you have that. You can also open a similar bank account called donor advised fund. Now, you are the designee of the donor advised fund, so technically it's not your money anymore. When you move money from your brokerage account into your DAF, it's called, you know,
Taxable investments, by the way.
taxable investment accounts. So not from your IRAs, your 401ks, anything like that, your brokerage account, Fidelity, Schwab, whatever. That is not your money anymore. When you've given it from your brokerage account into your DAF, that is when the gift occurs. So that is when, in that year that you transfer the money to that account, that's the year that you get to take the tax itemized deduction. The reason you want to do this or think about doing this is because you can take long-term capital gains off the table. And so when you're investing in stocks in your brokerage account, ideally, maybe not this year, those stocks are going up in value.
I did
Right.
it last year.
Yeah, so those stocks are increasing in value. And so the great thing about stocks that increase in value is, yay, it's worth more. Bad thing is when you sell those stocks to turn that into cash that you can spend, you have to pay taxes on those gains. I hope we're all familiar with that. But every year your bank sends you a statement with how many gains you've actually recorded and you plug in individual things. But you've recorded gains on those securities that have gone up in value. Now by donating to a DAF, so say you bought, I'm not to do it illustratively. By giving the securities that have appreciated, so those stocks that are now worth more than what you bought. I'll do this example in a minute. Then you put those stocks into a DAF, you erase those gains as taxable. So if you buy something for $1 and it's worth $11, if you sold it at that moment, you'd have to pay taxes on $10 of growth. If you take that $11 stock and you donate it to your DAF, you donated $11. That's what you get to put in your tax return that year is I donated $11. But you don't have to pay taxes on that gain. And so the strategy here for that is if I'm gonna give $11 anyway, like I was planning this year, I'm gonna give $11. I've got the security, this stock that's worth $11. You move that stock into your donor advised fund. You take the $11 deduction. But then you take that same $11 from your cash that you were going to give anyway, and you go buy that stock at $11 again. So effectively, you have the same amount of stock, you just have no gains. Now your basis, what that's called is, basis is the entry point at which you bought a stock, is that higher $11. There's a million amazing tax strategies regarding donor advised funds, but effectively what you can do is take your long-term gains off the table by donating them to DAFs. Once the money is in that DAF, then you write checks out of that DAF like it's going to stock. You can give, in this $11 example, you can give a lot of $1 checks to different organizations. That's the basic premise of it. If you're looking for ways to be tax advantaged in giving, donor advised fund, look it up. There's a couple great resources out there. Happy to talk to you about it afterwards as well. But
Pretty passionate for this.
most people don't know it exists until they're like in their 40s, have millions.
Appreciated giving is another word for it.
Yeah. But I just know it now. There are ways to give that are tax advantaged.
But no one's thinking about that because most financial advisors don't want you to be generous because that means you make less money. They make less money.
We might take clients' money that we have, we move it into an account that we can't double. So they do it. How do you open it down?
National
Great
Nutrition Foundation is a great one. Signature is another one. So it's literally takes like a minute, 2 minutes.
It's the easiest in the world.
And you can, so another example, this is maybe future years in advance, but like me and Matthew have had examples where a client has super high income one year, so they have $2 million of income that's gonna be super high that another years. So you offset that giving by doing a huge gift that year. You do your preload your giving. So for example, year or two ago, I had some gains. I gave to NCF or another donor advised fund, and I did my giving to BCF until it ran out, which ran out a while ago. The market went down, so I'm still getting cash, which is sad. But like, does that make sense? Kind of.
So we really want to get into the weeds of this part of the tax strategy behind donor advised funds. You can lump giving in years. And so I'm not how familiar, I don't want to do a tax lesson if nobody wants a tax lesson. So if you're not interested in the tax lesson, give me a thumbs down. If you're like, no, I'm actually kind of interested in this, give me a thumbs up.
I just, I'm not gonna understand at least half of what you say.
And that's why I don't want to waste
What you
your
just
time.
said, you explained it so well, like
Yeah.
beautifully, like incredible to me, and I didn't understand how. And I was trying so hard to follow you.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, so basically this is I'll give you the sweetest, shortest like blip
Use
of what it.
baby words.
When you're doing your taxes, you can take the government freebie for a deduction. So reduce your taxes by the government freebie, or you can do the hard way and you can go and itemize everything, right? Those are the two options you have. Government freebie is actually really nice. We all want to use it because it's huge. And honestly, where we're at in life, we probably don't have enough itemized deductions anyway, so it doesn't matter. However, giving is one of those itemized deductions. And so you can give for several years in 1 year using a DAF or not, but you can give for several years so that you can claim the itemized deduction and it'd be much bigger than the government freebie. And then you don't give those other years, you take the government freebie. So yes.
So like when you say you can give through the DAF for several years,
Mhm.
that would be you taking the amount for those several years and in 1 year moving it to that account. So essentially you're getting a ton in 1 year and not giving it that.
But
the benefit, the organizations that you're giving to can get it consistently.
Right.
So if I donate $10,000 a year to Bayou, I could do a $30,000 gift 1 year, and then each year I write a $10,000 check to Bayou out of that DAF account. But I get to claim the deduction for the giving all in that 1 year that I put $30,000 in. So it's you can say, well, I don't know.
Do y'all have resources to like learn about this outside of like financial advisors?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
just take.
I have PowerPoints.
Yeah.
So there's different custodians. National Christian Foundation is one that is faith-based. They're great. The people that work there, wonderful. Well, what I will say about National Christian Foundation is that they charge you a fee to have an account there, and it's like $20 a month. And so if you're going to do a donor advised fund at National Christian Foundation, I recommend moving your securities and then donating out of it immediately, so they can't charge you the fee. Because you move the money in and then move it out, no fee. However, so that's National Christian Foundation. If you have millions of dollars in the account, that $20 a month doesn't matter. For me, it matters. So
You also think of it like you're giving this too.
do it
You also think of it as you're giving $20 a month too.
to National Christian Foundation. Yes. They've got
Oh, the big
plenty,
brain play.
they've got plenty of donors. So I use Fidelity for my brokerage. There's the Fidelity Charitable. It's a DAF. It's not Christian necessarily. It's not Christian period, but it's Fidelity. But they don't charge, they charge an AUM. So they'll charge a tiny percentage of the amount of what I have in the account, which comes out to be like $1 a month rather than $20 a month. And they can give money to any of the Christian organizations that I give to anyway, as long as it's a 501c3, which it probably is. If it's not, whatever. But there's ways around that. But I use Fidelity Charitable. Signatory is a Christian one that has no fees, but they're currently running into a lot of operational issues. So our clients are frustrated with them right now. We need to get going. Sorry. Oh my God.
Sorry about that. That's a very random tangent,
Okay.
but we're something very passionate about. We took this earlier, generous and willing to share, so that where to give is having this openness So where outside of your percentage giving, and you're open to what God wants to do with it. Love this verse. This is a radical idea, I feel like. One gives freely, it grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers want, right? So there's this idea of freedom associated with giving, which is awesome. So live within your means. Common question that I feel like people are asking is how much should I spend, right? And what do we say? The easiest way to generate wealth is to spend less than you make and do it for a long time. But the thing is, there's a lot of people who have no idea what they're spending and no idea what they're making. And so we have clients that have a ton of money, make a ton of money, but they spend more than they have, which is crazy. But sometimes the only way that you know that is by having, and Matthew, I love, pushes back, because he made a great point that I feel like our generation like hates the word budgeting and stuff bad for a lot of people, and I get that, and I think that's fair. But like, I think the goal should be, hey, am I tracking my expenses? Do I have an idea of what I'm spending, or am I looking at it? Right, and so there's these tools, Mint, you need a budget, etc., that just allow you to be sure you know the condition of your flock, give careful attention to your herd, right? So I'm at least having an idea. And so someone asked last week, how do I like do that? Well, I can't figure out if I want to like look at it every day, look at it once a year. And I think it's all about finding this balance, right? Where it's like not looking at it like every day. Like for me, my rhythm is once a month. So I'm reviewing my expenses once a month. It takes like 15 minutes. And I'm putting it, recategorizing them if it gets it wrong. And I'm seeing like where I spent the most money each category, et cetera, et cetera.
I do it every day.
Some people like to do it every day,
For 30.
but like, it could be your own thing where there is an area for me where if I did it every day, I would be even more frugal to a negative sense than I already am. If I were to like look at every single penny that's going out of my bank account every day. Because I'm already a saver. So I'll just say, try to have an idea of what you're spending, and there's tools to make it a lot easier for you to do that too, unless you're an Excel nerd and like that. You should over a little bit, Bubba. Every spending decision is a spiritual decision, so a lot of times where our money goes, our heart follows. So that's why giving is an awesome example of that. But if you like, what I think is cool is when you look at your month or year of expenses, is a lot of times you'll see where a lot of your heart was kind of attended towards, right? So with God owning it all, that kind of flips the script of like, hey, I'm inviting God into every spending decision, inviting God into every saving decision, which is hard. And this is really helpful for us since there's some young guns, there's a lot of young guns in this room. Like we talked about with clients that we have that like spend a ton of money, it is so hard for them to pull back once they've already hit that level. And so the ability to like start now and build habits of being aware of what you're spending, trying to get it to a reasonable number based on your income, living with your means, not tying it to tying your identity, what you're spending, is a lot easier now than it will be when there's a lot more zeros on the end of your income or your expenses. So just training yourself to not try gratifying the desires of your flesh instantly. Let's continue. Someone asked last week, this is something I feel like I wrestle with too, is like, is it okay to spend X amount of dollars on XYZ product, right? And I'm gonna make a hard stance today, I'm just kidding. But the challenge is like, hey, it might be like, if you were to pray and actually think about each decision, like figuring out what the root of that decision is. So is it, a lot of times for me and for people, it's like, because I want people to say, bro, those are nice shoes you got there. Or they're like, yo, that's, I don't know, cool haircut or something. I don't know. But like, I love, like, Hayes gave an example last week of like, I bought, maybe it was like a $500 pair of jeans in college. But he's like, but I've literally worn them like all the time for like 5 years. I'm like, that's a great investment. Like, you know, you're using I mean, you're using, like, maybe there's a better investment, but like, it's just the idea of like, what is is it for practicality, longevity, is it investment? Is there like flippancy, like, in the way that you're thinking about your spending? I'm saying that's where you can get in trouble, especially for spenders. And then this is like helpful for me as someone who like hates spending sometimes, is First Timothy 6 talks about he's given us wealth for our enjoyment. So like at the same time, like he gave us wealth to enjoy too. So there's this balance of like he wants you to enjoy like life a little bit. Yeah, Ecclesiastes 4 talks about he has given wealth and wisdom and power to enjoy it. So like this theme of that he's given us wealth for a reason. Does that make sense? What do y'all think about that? I feel like that's a hard question depending on what kind of person you are.
I think it's hard to categorize this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the short answer. And there is really no concrete guidelines how we should spend and live with our money. It all, like everything, goes back to your heart posture behind it. And so with that, I don't know how hard half the time, but I have friends that help with like, deciphering what's going on. So this is just an encouragement. Don't bring your friends into every purchase you make that's annoying, but like trend with your friends, like, man, you know, how I look around and smile sitting on my pile of coins, or sorry, that's a dorky reference. But like, that's what community is for. How are you trending? How is your part regarding your spending?
Like buying yourself a Peter Millar posture.
Peter Millar from.
I'm kidding. This me and McCraddock conversation about that. This is not like an actual thing.
Cool.
Contentment. This is like, I think the biggest key within the whole living thing is, gosh, I'm just gonna read this one. It's kind of long. Proverbs 30 is a great big example of contentment. Well, Matthew stole, so I found it.
No.
Do you all have any?
Just kidding, I found
ways to track when you spend or where money goes?
I use YNAB and I'll die on that hill.
Why do you like that over Mint?
Why NAB? It's you need a budget to me. So
You need a budget, but YNAB.
Mint is free. That's why I like it probably. Why
Yeah,
not?
but he like specifically wanted why now?
Because I don't like Mint.
Why?
Mint, I don't like the way it categorizes. It thinks for me and I'm much more complicated.
Oh, so you like, you set the patterns on.
Yeah. And then you have to go in and improve everything. It doesn't auto do, but it guesses and I can just like, yes. I also like the premise behind how it budgets. There's two different fundamental ideas behind budgeting. It's how much am I gonna have? I'm gonna track it out before I spend it, or there's a $0 based budgeting, zero-based budgeting. Zero-based budgeting is what I have, how I'm gonna use what I have. And as you make more, you add or take away from the have pile. So basically every dollar has a job. So think the envelope method. You have all your money in cash, you put it in the envelopes that you want to spend it on. When you spend it, you pull it out of the envelope. YNAB is effectively that. And you can link all of your credit cards, all of your bank accounts, all of your investment accounts to it.
How much does it cost?
It's $89 a year, I believe. If you want to like use it and don't want to, ask me, I'll just throw it on my plan. You'll get to see how much I spend. It'll be great. A lot of people have been on my plan at one time or another while they were trying YNAB, so don't feel funny about that. I'm more than happy to like, well, I love YNAB and I'll teach YNAB because there's a learning curve with it. I'm not ashamed, I guess, of my spending or my money. So, and I'm not creepy either, so.
But back to contentment, Proverbs 8:30-9 says, keep falsehood and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Right, so he's saying, give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Otherwise, I may have too much and disown you, or otherwise I may have too little and steal and profane your name. So this idea of like his prayer is literally like, don't give me too much, but don't give me too little, which is like just a really cool like prayer that I'd never heard before. Where it's like, hey, I just want to be content and be where I'm at. Well, this measure wealth not by the things you have, but by the things you would not take money for. And then, as we talked about earlier, both spending and saving both make idolatry out of money. Uncontrolled spending and complete unwillingness to spend both arise out of making money, such as an idol. So there's this balance somewhere in between there where you have controlled spending and you have a willingness to spend in a healthy way. And money's not an idol. And then one of my favorite verses that is taken out of context all the time. I'm not saying it's because I have need, for I've learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know it is to be in need. I know it is. I've plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any every circumstance, whether well fed or hungry or living in plenty or in want. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. So he's saying, Tim Tebow's talking about contentment. So yeah, in any situation and circumstance, God gives you the ability to be content. Cool. Thoughts on those, guys?
What was the first one again?
Proverbs 38.
No, that's a spooky song. Oh, that's.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're delightfully long-winded people. And so that was give and live, which I think we can all do the most about right now in our lives. So I'm gonna go quickly through O, and then grow being the last one. We'll talk about probably more in a Q&A setting because it's effectively the idea of how do we grow our money. So you might have a lot of questions around that along. But O. This is one of the more like probably controversial parts of what we're doing because debt, leverage, small loan of $1 million is kind of how we see the world. As in America, you think we have to borrow money to make money. And I'll stand here and tell you like, I don't have a concrete opinion on this. There are some concrete ideas around it in the Bible. And Nathan and I probably disagree on how we see debt largely as well. But what I will say is with debt, be cautious about it. There's a debt that we're accruing every day that we work. It's called taxes. That's pretty clear. Render to Caesar what is Caesar's. Pay your taxes. Don't be delinquent. Be responsible. And there's conversation about tax. But then as far as like other debt, credit cards, mortgage, auto, business loans, you name it. That's where the water gets gray. And that's where I'm not going to tell you like that you need to think about it in this way. I'm not going to give you guidelines for exactly how to do it. And I don't even want to give you like super strict guidelines for how you should think about it other than be prayerful, be in community, and be cautious. Bible does explicitly tell us to be cautious about going into debt. Have a plan for how you're going to get out of it. A very good plan. Because what debt does is debt ties us to something else. Period. It's not a physical internal tie, obviously, but it does tie you to something you have to be responsible for, and that is a burden. So be cautious about it. Don't be careless. I'll read Proverbs 22. I have it memorized. Be not one who gives pledges, who puts up securities for debts. If you have nothing with which to pay, why should your bed be taken from under you? No like definitive do or do not, but be cautious about it because there's reality on the line. You're putting what you have at stake when you go into debt. Is it worth it? Good question to ask. Converted by it. Yeah. I'll answer any questions you have about my opinions on debt. So we'll just broadly. I think mortgage debt, probably okay. Don't buy a house you can't afford. That's dumb. But I wouldn't think, oh, I've got a mortgage, what a burden on my soul. Probably not. You got an asset behind that debt that if you did default, they would claim the house and you'd be free of the debt, but also free of the house. So I'd be okay with the mortgage. We'll go step down from mortgage. Let's talk about auto debt. Similar idea. There's an asset behind that debt, so if you didn't pay it, they repo your car. However, you might still be a little extra liable because cars are depreciating assets. So if you're taking out a loan for something that's going down in value more rapidly than you're paying off that loan, you eventually are what's called upside down on your loan. And so you owe more than what you have. You're really weary of being upside down on debt. If you owe more than what you have that you loaned for, you are a burden yourself with finance payments that you can afford. Below that even, let's say credit card debt. Why do you? I'm just kidding. With credit cards, we'll go to the next slide. Yeah, we're here. With credit cards, I think that you should treat credit cards super responsibly. Don't treat them as free money to just rack up. Pay them down, treat them as money that is in your bank account, and with credit card, just like extra points or a freedom of liability. Pay off credit card debt, don't carry it, because it's not money you have. You're borrowing money and spending what you don't have. There's something inherently puzzling about that. You should kind of get to the root of that within yourself. So the debt snowball, we've probably all heard of it. If you haven't, encourage you to look it up. If you have a lot of debt, it's wildly helpful. If you don't have a lot of debt, it's not super. Practical advice, 28-36 rule. This is 28% of your income, your gross income, should go towards your mortgage. So if you're buying a house.
Or below.
Or below, 28 or buy right up to 28%, you won't regret it. For what you make, take 28% of that, that's what your mortgage, interest, insurance payment should reasonably be or at below. And then it shouldn't be 36% of your total debt, or it should be 36% of
Your mortgage plus all your other debt.
it should be 36% of your gross income. So you should really, from financial advising hat, you should never have more than 36% of your income going towards debts, gross income. So $100,000 a year, you can pay $36,000 a year towards debt.
Ideally, you don't.
Ideally, you don't, but you're just wilding. Start that snowball. So have debt. Basically, the premise here is start with the little guys. Make yourself feel good about yourself. Pay off all your little debts until you're paying off your biggest debt. And then every time you pay off a debt, use the money you're paying towards that to pay the next one. Snowball. Pay off your credit cards in full. Interest rates on credit cards are some of the highest interest rates that you can get. What an interest rate on a credit card means is when you borrow that money, you don't pay it off immediately. They say that you owe them more money. So if you borrow $10 to pay 10% interest, is to say, I'm going to pay you $11 back. Credit cards have up to like 27% interest. So if you borrow $100, you're going to owe $127 if you don't pay it back quickly. So pay off your credit cards quickly because they get expensive fast. Nathan and I probably disagree on this one because we've got cars here. I like cars. So I have a car payment, but I feel very okay about my car payment because for a lot of other reasons. Don't ask me about it. But wise. So to buy an asset that depreciates in value, so it's going down in value as you own it, you don't want to be paying interest, paying more and more on it. For things that depreciate, it makes the most sense to pay in cash. Get the cash out of the way, let the asset depreciate value, then you have whatever the value of that asset is. If it's going down into value and you're also paying payments on it, that's when you get, the reason that this is true is because that's when you're most likely to go upside down on a loan. So we're general, we're trying to avoid that. Car people have totally different opinions.
Unless it's a really cool car. Then it appreciates and you're good.
Or if it doesn't use gasoline.
There you go.
Hypothetically.
Okay, next slide. That was probably all we needed to do. Grow. This one, I want this to be the most Q&A-ish section of the piece because this is like where we're gonna get the practical, like 401k stuff. So I'll go through the rules of thumb that we have. Emergency funds. You should all have one. Life comes at you. You don't know where your money's gonna come from. Spend it. Good idea. Take it. We recommend having 3 to 6 months of expenses. If you're married, you can be on the lower side of things because odds that both of you lose your job at the same time, less likely. You don't necessarily need as much. If you're single and you've got a lot of like expenses that happen, I recommend having more in your emergency fund because if you lose your job, you're your sole income provider. Now you can fluctuate that because like, oh, my parents are super benevolent, and if I lost my job, I could move in with them.
You suggest having that in cash?
I do suggest having that in cash. And if you're like, oh, but I have to leverage every bit of my money, bring your number down a little bit. But I would say 3 months of liquid cash and savings account directly connected to your checking account is a great amount, is a very healthy, safe, smart thing to do. Just in the instance like, oh crap, I blew out all 4 of my tires on one road, I need 4 new tires, that's $1,000. And if you have that in your checking, great, but like, otherwise, that's what the emergency fund is for. I didn't know I was gonna need 4 blowouts. Or I need an air conditioner, 10 grand. See ya. I couldn't have told you that my air conditioner was gonna go out. So, emergency fund. Next, so after you've saved, so this is all talking about extra money that you have. This is after you've given, this is after you've eaten, this is after your cat has eaten. This is your extra money. This is your extra money. So we'd say first, build that emergency fund. You didn't know that? I'm so bad. Next, I would say contribute to your retirement accounts. So the hierarchy of retirement accounts, I'm gonna say your 401k, give a match. Give a match in your 401k, hit that match. The next Roth. And do Roth if you can. If you don't know what that means, I encourage you to look up. I'm not gonna explain it to you right now, but it's a tax strategy. Use Roth IRAs and Roth 401ks. You see those options, Roth. Just think Roth.
Unless you're in your highest earning income years.
We're not, nobody here is like that. And tax rate and tax bracket will probably just increase the next 20 years anyway, so.
My company also does 403B, does that matter?
So yes,
Is
okay,
that one-
401k and 403b are the same type of account, it just depends on what your employer is. Your employer is likely a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Whereas mine is for-profit organization, so we have 401ks, you have 403bs. It's just written into the tax code for how the accounts classified.
My old job was 401k and my new job is 403B. I transferred the 401k funds and they still go to my late savings account.
That's correct. Yeah, the same retirement dollars, what they're called. Yeah, you can roll those back and forth between the two. You can roll it into an IRA. Lots. So get your company match first. And then I would say, so this is where it gets kind of hairy, HSA. So an HSA is a health savings account. We like HSAs because they are triple tax advantaged. Crazy. So with retirement accounts, why they're beneficial is because they allow you to save money in a way that is tax advantage. So this is where that Roth and non-Roth comes into play, but basically it's, you only have to pay taxes on that money once. Whereas with other kinds of account, you have to pay taxes on that money more than once, likely. With an HSA, every dollar that goes in, every dollar that grows, every dollar that comes out, never goes a cent of it to the government.
If it comes out for what?
If you spend it on qualified medical expenses. Now, the list of qualified medical expenses, I'll tell you, is ostensibly long, meaning like toothpaste, I believe, is a qualified medical expense. But like, probably most, not realistically, but probably most practically, like, oh, key part of an HSA. Don't ever spend from it while you're young. Wait to spend from it while you're old. And you're like, oh, but I'm doing all my expenses now. What if I don't have a lot of medical expenses when I'm old? Aha, we thought of everything. We thought of everything. You can save all of your medical receipts starting today, and then you can give the government a binder in 20 years that's like, here's my $40,000 of previous year's medical expenses, and then they cut you a check for $40,000 and you don't pay taxes on it. And so where this becomes awesome, for those of you who are married or want to be married or have kids, kids are expensive, particularly having babies is expensive. And so when you're writing checks for having a child, when you're 80 years old, I had a kid when I was 30 years old and I want the money for it now.
Still a lot of work, so you don't have to do that either.
You don't have to. But I will say also, everything you go to CVS, so feminine products are all qualified.
Why not spend for it now? I don't understand.
Because if you
Tax.
spend from it now, you're destroying the value that it could have. So if you save, so if you can afford,
it compounds?
yeah, it's tax free. So if you spend from it now, you lose out on it. Because you could probably afford the toothpaste that you're buying from your like normal budget.
And there's a limit to what you can contribute to an HSA.
You can contribute $3,600 a year to your HSA at 72 if you're married.
Is there limits to the appreciation that can go on inside?
If you put an IPO stock into your HSA, it becomes $1 billion stock, you have $1 billion HSA.
Then you probably have to pay taxes on it if you withdrew and use it for other reasons.
If you use it for another reason, you pay taxes and a penalty. until you're 65 years old, at which point, when you're 65 years old, guys, this is awesome. When you're 65 years old, your HSA could be an HSA or an IRA, either one doesn't matter.
Oh,
Except you don't want to die with a cent in your HSA, other reasons, ask about it. Beyond that, we're shooting 15% towards retirement.
Including your match, including,
I don't know the next number. You tried, so you want to be saving 15% of your earnings for retirement, so that when you go to retire, you have what you need. Ideally, some extra to each of these. But where we stand right now is if you're not saving 10% towards retirement, if you're only taking your like company match, whatever that is, and it's not 10%, I'd encourage you to try and bolster your retirement savings just to hit that 10%. I promise you can probably live on what you're making otherwise. If you can't, let's figure it out. Let's do my math. Something like that. After you've covered these are all retirement and safety focused. Then we begin to talk about your goals. Goals are things like, I need a new car, I need a new house, I need a house, or I want to think about my kid's college. All those different ideas, there's different ways to be creative, responsible around investing. Happy to help them out. When designing a portfolio, so what things you're investing in, largely it comes down to your risk tolerance and the time horizon of having those investments. This is quite honestly the work of a financial advisor. I'm not going to talk to you about it right now, but I'm happy to be that free advice for you if you do need it.
simply speaking, if you want to buy a car in 2 or 3 years, you probably don't want to put that in the stock market because the market could be down like it is right now, and you'd be having to sell out of your account when it's down 20%.
So questions, this is the end of our presentation.
What accounts have fees? So like 401k, HSA, brokerage.
Yeah, so
What do you get charged
DAFs have
for?
fees, 401ks have fees. 401k fees have to be explicitly laid out in your 401k package, but 401ks are so important and vital, and they have such a high contribution limit that you need to just pay those fees to get over it. IRAs don't have fees. You can open an IRA at Chase, you can open an IRA at Fidelity, you can open an IRA at Vanguard, Schwab, you name it, you can open an IRA in there. They have a small limit, so you can only contribute to $6,000 a year to an IRA, but no fees. Also, with a 401k, investment options have to be explicitly laid out under the safe harbor provisions of 2013. Basically, they give you a list of pre-approved investments that you can invest money in, and they're generally good. If an IRA, it's your pony, you gotta figure it out.
What about if you change employers? Is there like additional fees?
Great. When you change employers, your former company is not required, they're required to maintain your assets for a certain amount of time before you have to do something.
60 days, I think.
Yes. A lot of employers, they'll let you keep your money there because they like collecting fees off of the account, because you're not doing anything, they're not doing anything, and they're making money off of it. You as the employee have the option to do 3 things. 1, you can leave it where it is. 2, Elizabeth, you can roll it into your new plan. So if you have a new employer, the new 401k, you can move your 401k dollars and consolidate them with the new
Which
employer.
we would recommend it like in this age.
I don't always recommend at this stage. No, it's per person, and there's actually new laws around this that we have to be explicit with it. Second option or third option is to roll it out into an IRA. So 401k dollars can become IRA dollars. When it does that, you pay no fees on it, but you are in charge of the investment. So
Which some people like.
Which some people like. If you had a financial advisor and they were charging you fees on your money, then it becomes extra complicated, because if it's a 401k dollars, your advisor can't bill you on the dollars. It's an IRA, they'll for sure bill you on it. So they have to legally provide you with its most expensive. You need this. We recommend retirement dollars that are in IRAs or 401ks or 403bs are super protected by the government. So you want to put as many dollars in those as you can, because if you get sued, they can't come after those dollars. The most you can possibly save for retirement every year is like $35,500 in retirement accounts, unless you're self-employed, and then it's like $85,000. Okay, Questions?
Quick point here, while y'all are chewing on questions. This is, I think, just really cool, especially coming off of throw your money in any stock and it goes up 1,000%, where, you know, in crypto realm, where it's like everyone hear about the person that turned $1 or $2 million. Wealth gain hastily will dwindle, whatever gathers it little by little will increase it. That's pretty radical again today, I feel like in America, it's like the idea of, so I feel like this is talking about compounding interest, that's just me. But like, that's just a cool idea, it's like, essentially, it's like, hey, what if I like actually wasn't trying to consolidate my wealth into one area that's super risky, that I could lose it all, what if I actually was wise and a good steward and like tried to gather it little by little, and it grew slowly over time. Just thought.
Happy to like sit down with any of you at any point and talk explicitly about any one of these things. Like, you have no idea how much joy it brings me to help people individually on these topics. And in this setting, it's kind of hard because a lot of people, and there's time at stake, but if you want to, I'm more than willing to discuss these at length. And I promise I'm not going to be, I try to be as simple as I can.
If I don't have any big expenses coming up, how much money should I have in cash?
What do you spend per month, essentially? You don't have to answer that, I'm saying, it'd be that times 3 or 4 or 5 or 6.
Necessary living expenses. So
Not-
that's
non-discretionary,
It doesn't
yeah.
include, like, we go to the movies every week. It's like, this is our rent, this is our food, this is car insurance.
So everything else invested?
I am, yep.
Low split of stocks, bonds, whatever else.
Don't listen to me. I do something different.
Being a private guy.
All right, well.
I have 100% of my portfolio is in private.
Interesting questions.
He's 100% private equity. Funny.
Yeah.
But I also have a house, so I'm not saving for anything particularly.
What are y'all doing every Thursday? Like what, like, we're obviously going into a recession or, I didn't mean this, I guess we're not, we might be, I don't know. Like, how should we handle,
A good investment strategy is taken irrespective of broader economic conditions. So your investment strategy shouldn't matter what the market is. If you have a 5-year time horizon on your portfolio, we invest it as a 5-year time horizon portfolio, whatever the market's doing. So timing the market is what you're alluding to. Never works out for people that are timing the market. In the long run, you might win this one, you might lose the next. You might have $10 this time, but you might have 10 million the next, doesn't matter. By data, statistics, people at time market don't like.
so our allocation should only depend on the personal risk, not what we're trying to do.
In time horizon.
So what you're trying to do is time horizon, personal risk is also.
That's about it. You should be trying to like time the market with asset versus other things.
I mean, we maybe change 5% potentially based on the environment, but that's about it. I feel like.
If the market doesn't go a wild dip, fine, but maybe not.
If a client is like, for example, if a client's retiring, they need their money in 3 or 4 years from their IRA, and the market goes down and they have 80% in bonds, we're not gonna try to time that if they're gonna need it, you know, in 2 or 3 years, you know.
Let's finish the PowerPoint. Yeah, 2 slides, and then we will stick around for any kind of questions you have. Don't worry about this. This is the time-based investing. This is a great pinwheel thing that we have handouts in the back for.
No, but.
Kind of.
Okay, let's go through. Start giving, percentage giving, sacrificial giving. They're kind of just like practical steps of how to grow in these areas. Repay credit card debt, repay all debt, set the mortgage. Save for emergency, save for retirement, save, invest for goals. Track monthly spending, maintain a spending plan, set lifestyle finish lines. Granted, y'all probably don't know what your lifestyle finish lines are right now. The question is how much is enough? But this is
This one
like,
becomes much better 10, 15 years from now. So come back to us in 10, 15 years.
with your money.
Okay, so this is the last slide, kind of questions. Feel free to go if you got somewhere to be. I know we're like 20 minutes over what you were probably expecting, but otherwise.
Hey, I want to say something.
Otherwise, Nathan has something he'd like to say.
I just want to say, I'll talk this one first. This, like, for people who've read this book, people that have been here a few weeks and for just today, it's really easy to, like, the number of things that I've gone to or read a book and been like, man, that's awesome, or someone listening, that's awesome. Like, I want you to actually think about what, like, you're gonna do differently, or what you will do differently, because person that looks in the mirror and sees his face and does nothing, something like that, he's foolish. So that's in James.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's just a challenge for you guys, like, actually think about, talk about.
Make one change. Whether that's downloading YNAB, one change. That's doing the one uncomfortable gift, one change.
Yeah, and I just wanna, I don't know if there are more questions, but I think, like, we need God's, like, sovereignty and power and wisdom in this, and he generously gives those who ask. And so I just want to close in prayer over that, if that's cool with you guys. All right, cool. Jesus, thanks so much for people that want to learn more about your heart for the money that you've entrusted to us. God, this is really hard, and we need your wisdom and your guidance and your conviction. Challenge us, free us from the love of money. That's the root of all kinds of evil. And so we ask that you would do that and that you challenge us, help us to be generous, that you help us to use what you've entrusted us with to further your kingdom. And we can't do that by ourselves. So we ask that you put people in our life to challenge us in that, and that you'd help us fall more in love with you and your words, and we'll do that well. We love you. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Oh, yeah. I'll do this form for us.
Thanks, guys. Sorry,